Welcome to Life by Design, episode 393. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richardson. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Kreisha Jug.
Happy to be here, as always.
Yeah, creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're going old school, OG, back to Eat by Design, really how to get your diet right and starting from the basics. So if you're new to the podcast or we haven't touched this topic, at least at a fundamental sense in quite some time, we thought, let's go back and let's go through the 10 Eat by Design principles, talk about how they apply to your life. We'll talk about, food, the relationship with food, how to make a lasting change in your diet. And we'll share a bit of our own personal experiences with you. So I think you're going to get tons out of today's episode. So Kreisha, why don't you start us off? What prompted you to think about, getting back to the basics on Eat by Design?
Oh, I was just, reading the social media news and just, a lot of diet stuff, because that's the stuff that pops up for me, because I'm always interested in where people's thinking is around diet and nutrition. And you just have those moments where you're like, oh man, you just feel bad for people because that they want the results and
right.
Their passion to get the results that they want, whether it's losing weight or getting better health is there. So it's not a passion or a motivation thing. It's just the ideas around nutrition are incorrect. And what they're doing is not going to deliver the result that they want, and when you try to reach out, it's challenging because most people don't want to actually hear what they need to do.
Well, I think you're being far too nice. I think most people have lost their mind.
Sure. If you want to say it like that, I think
when it comes to nutrition, like how is it possible that, on one hand, people are saying don't eat meat. On the other end of the scale, you got people saying only eat meat, and then everything in between.
Yeah, I just don't think my whole point in being kind around it is I'm more interested in the person who's listening to this podcast who's genuinely confused and wants to know what to do. And I just don't think entering a conversation with you've lost your mind.
Well, I think what I'm saying is not necessarily the individual people listening to the podcast, but I feel like in general, especially when it comes to nutrition, we'll focus on nutrition because we'll probably spark a whole conversation into the other areas about, what portion of people's mind have been lost over the last few months. But
well, hold on. I don't think you can be harsh enough on the people who understand the science and the data and are still misrepresenting the facts. I think that's where you draw the line in saying, and you're harming people. You're lying.
Well, you can't be right and you can't be right and wrong. Right. I mean, I think this is where I think the general consensus for, I believe, from what I gather, the majority of people that I don't want to say are on the planet, but I just feel like most people I interact with, the normal attitude is very much everything in moderation, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whatever works for you. A lot of these, diatribes that, people use, especially when it comes to nutrition, but there is black and white. There's things we don't know, right? I mean, that there's things we don't know, but there are rights and wrongs. And especially when it comes to nutrition, people don't want to accept that or acknowledge that. And there's a probably whole psychological reason behind that. And people taking responsibility for what they're doing and the results they're getting or not getting. I mean, again, I can only speak personally, but even knowing information, having a clear guideline and feeling like, having a good understanding of the best research, if I'm not doing the right stuff, then I'm not getting a result that I want. And if enough time goes by and I'm not getting a result, then maybe I need to look at what I'm doing. Maybe I need to look at the rules and the blueprint that I have in place or how closely I'm actually following it so I can figure out, well, what is right and actually do that.
Yeah. Sorry. Ari just came in. No, it's okay. No, I agree. Like I said, I know why. Listen, it's tough, man. As a human, there's certain beliefs that you have, and it's just confirmation bias. We all do this. We want things to fit into our belief system. We don't love being wrong. It's hard to admit, but like you said, reality is what reality is, and it doesn't matter your opinions on stuff. It matters what's actually happening, right? And
Right.
you can't wish or dream, the facts of reality to change. So if you're in a situation where you're unhappy with what you're doing, the hardest change to make is switching your ideas.
Yeah.
That's the most challenging one, but that's really, like, for most people, I mean, that's really the key. It's time and understanding the fundamentals are different, and that's just not what people do with nutrition. It's, well, I probably should take this new supplement. I need more magnesium, or maybe I'm getting too much magnesium. I need more zinc. And in my mind, I'm like, you drink Coke and you eat chips 7 days, 7 times a day. Like, I get you might need magnesium and zinc, but maybe we need to get some, maybe we need to go back to square one here.
Yeah, and I think that's what we'll do. And I think, again, one of my favorite analogies here, especially with nutrition and health in general, is rocks and sand, right? Stephen Covey's.
Yeah. Oh, classic.
It's just, if you get this, you get the idea. And it is, I'll try not to go on too much of a rant here, but you're right. It drives me crazy. The same thing when people are talking about, I need more vitamin C, and I need to, take my vitamin B27. And I think get my orthotic ground down by, 0.1 degrees on the right side. And I'm like, okay, but you don't work out. You don't eat
sleep
protein. You don't eat any real food. You barely sleep. You're on your computer, playing games all the time. You don't get your spine checked. You don't like your life, but you want to take vitamin C and get 1 degree taken off your orthotic, and you can't figure out why, your health isn't transforming. Well,
exactly.
It's not complicated. And, when I look at, hey, we give you a blueprint, we're going to go through the 10 steps over today's podcast, or this might get split into a couple podcasts, depending on how far this goes. But, if I look at people who are not successful or who struggle, there's definitely a challenge with being consistent and putting in the time and effort. And whether it's the fact that food that is not wholesome and nutritious can taste really amazing, or whether it's the fact that, we've got emotional relationships with food that are, negative. There's a million different reasons why. And so, sure, we got to get down to putting in place some basic behaviors, but let's talk about, the actual principles, because if you understand those, you can start to apply them in your life without getting too complicated and focusing too much on the minutia.
Totally agree. You want to start with numbers? Let's start from the most important. Like, this one is so important and so easily overlooked because it seems so obvious.
Right.
But it's really like, if you just did this and you did it over a long period of time, you'd be just fine.
Yes, that's it. And I think you hit it there. It's if you do nothing else, focus on food quality and not food quantity as a starting point. When you think about transformation, especially that is dietary, people's initial thought is, I need to lose 10 pounds, right? Or I need to get into this dress, or I need to fit in these clothes. And those are great goals, by the way. I'm not suggesting they're not. But the next natural progression is for them to think about restricting their caloric intake. Like, I need to eat less. And that's what people think, is I need to eat less, and that's going to get me the result. But eating less really only makes you hungry. And I'm not suggesting that if you're eating 7,000 calories a day, you don't need to eat less. I'm just saying that as a primary first step, instead of thinking of eating less, I want you to think about eating more of real food. And then, the first principle in Eat by Design is real food first. And you'll notice with the first 5 steps in Eat by Design, none of them are to take anything away. And I do think that's an important point. And one of the things that is unique to great systems, Eat by Design being one of them, is that we're not suggesting that you stop doing a bunch of things. My first nutritional advice to somebody isn't stop drinking coffee and then start training for a marathon. Which is, it's amazing how often that seems to be the two things people do. Oh, I need to stop with the coffee and I got to start running. And, I'm not sure, I'm not saying it's the worst combination, but it's not the best one either. And so if you just focus, guys, on eating real food, and I don't even know if we have to go into this, but, real food generally has one ingredient: carrot, apple, steak, chicken, beef, pork. You get the idea. If you just focus on that, your results would be absolutely astounding.
So let me play devil's advocate, because here's the gap now, right? So the gap is, hey, I want to fit into this dress, or I want to lose whatever pounds because my kid's getting married,
Yep.
and I want to be thin. And the advice that you're giving me is not going to get me there in the 50-day time period that I've given myself.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll answer that. So
100%, and that's why I'm asking, because I'm listening, and I agree, but now I'm in the mind of the person listening to the podcast that's like, well, I don't really care about being healthy. I just want to get in the dress, so I'm going to starve myself and start running marathons because I know that cardio is going to help me lose weight, and I know I need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight.
Yeah. So I'll answer the question for you, and I think the context here is, yes, you need to identify the goals of the person you're working with or yourself. Are you looking for a tactic, or are you looking for a strategy? Right? Those are the two components here to me. You want a tactic that's going to help you lose 10 pounds and get in the dress? Great. You can try starving yourself and running a marathon. I'd still make the case that as a tactic, it's still not going to work as well as just taking, 8 weeks and eating real food.
Yep.
That said, you can try it. It can definitely be a test. And I think it's less that it's going to work, and it's more that it's an accepted route for people.
Sure.
Right. So if I were to meet with anybody and do 10 people across the board and say, what's the fastest way to lose weight? They're going to say, I should start running and eat less. But really, if you look at what happens in most of those cases, the consistency is poor and the fall off is really high. It's very difficult to eat less food and to start. It's hard to do. What's not hard to do is eat more real food, add some resistance training, and, keep yourself full while still, trying to maintain the lean muscle you have at a slight caloric deficit because you've stopped eating sugar or you've started eating more real food. And by natural default, you're eating less of the other stuff, especially if you're a newbie to this. Weight loss as a newbie is way easier than if you've been doing this for an extended time, or if you've approximated lower body fat levels. If you're new to making a transformation in, say, weight loss, your easiest first step is do some resistance training, go for a walk, and eat a bunch of protein. Like, really, you would get the result a large percentage of the time, and you'd actually be able to maintain that for a decent amount of time until you had to maybe get a little more complex with, what the meals look like and so on. So the first principle here is eat real food, and it's really the most important principle of all.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, you touched on it. I think because we're talking about the most important principle, which it is, I think what you're talking about is people believe that they need to have a mindset of depravity to get the results that they want. And that is a mindset for complete disasters. And because listen, this is what people don't understand. They don't understand that people who have good diets, actually enjoy eating the food that they're eating. So yesterday we were at your place, and there was corn and hamburgers, and that's real food, right? Because it was just beef in the burgers and it was just corn in the corn, and we enjoyed the meal, right? If you want a really interesting experiment, just look at the fitness industry. The fitness industry is really, really amazing, because the people who are the most successful in the fitness industry, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's fitness competitions, fitness modeling, are the ones who actually enjoy doing the stuff. The other ones who are like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to choke down this spinach and this chicken breast. Those are the people who, when it's over, end up putting on 120 pounds and look terrible because the mindset's not right. You can't deprive yourself to success. You need to actually enjoy the stuff that you're doing. So the recommendation is for long-term, and real food is delicious. So start learning to try different foods and getting used to the taste of it.
Well, and I was just thinking of yesterday and how funny it was. We actually went out. Dana got gluten-free buns, and we brought the hamburgers out, and we had ours without the bun. And for the little kids, we had to show you, what their regular meals are like. It was literally like we had brought out a bag of candy.
Right.
These kids are buns. They're freaking out that they got gluten-free buns because for them, that's just not the norm. And And, again, eating real food is the fundamental principle here. And it's one that gets passed down through our family, and it's how we eat. I mean, even at Charlie's Cafe, everything is essentially real food. Even the treats are, we try and make them with real food. And of course they're baked together with, sugar and things like that. So, you're away from the real food, at least from its main concept, but you get the idea that when you're focusing on real food first, I mean, this could be, as you said, a whole podcast. Each one of these could be a whole podcast. When you focus on real food first, you essentially are training your body to determine when it's full. It's easy to do. And when you learn how to cook, and that's not complicated either, especially with, obviously with the internet, you just jump on and you type in, Eat by Design, beef or paleo beef or keto beef or, whatever you want. And you'll come up with 100 recipes that you can use that are going to taste amazing. Yep. And, what I love about eating real food is that it simplifies the whole process. When you eat real food, you're just not as hungry because your body's getting signaled that it's getting nutrition versus, and this is what we use at Eat by Design a lot as our example, if you're eating the same amount of calories but not real food, so say cupcakes, have 1,000 calories in beef or 1,000 calories in cupcakes, you're still going to be hungry when you eat 1,000 calories in cupcakes because your body didn't get nutrition, it just got calories.
Yep.
So the second one, let's talk about the second one, Crayshow, because this is, one obviously is important. Two is kind of 1B really. And that's eat protein with every meal. This might be one of the biggest things and areas where we differ from other podcasts and, health advice. And of course, there's lots of people who are right on board and say the exact same thing as us. And we feel confident that this is actually correct. But eating protein with every meal is, I almost in some ways would put it first, but I get the idea of why real food has to go first and understanding the food quality. But this is a very close second. When I'm working with clients, instead of measuring, carbohydrate intake and measuring foods, we just, with the palm of our hand, explain this is the amount of protein you need to eat in a day. So just do that. Eat real food and eat this much protein. And my experience personally and with clients is almost everything else falls into place. I'm not sure about you if you track that or you've seen that with clients, but for me, if I say, look, here's your fist and you weigh 150 pounds, eat 3 of those a day or 6 of those a day or whatever the amount is, if they just do that, it's super simple to follow and get results.
Yeah, again, I think the mindset that you're creating here is you're making protein the focal point of your nutrition. Right. So when it's, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, or, however you schedule your day. Okay, I'm going to eat my breakfast. The first thought is, what's my protein source going to be?
Yes. Well, what's interesting is, when you look at different versions of Eat by Design. And so when somebody asks me about keto or paleo or, higher carbohydrate or lower carbohydrate, I always say Eat by Design is the strategy. But there's a ketogenic version of Eat by Design. There's a paleo version of Eat by Design. There's a higher carb version of Eat by Design. Keto is just saying don't eat carbohydrates, and eating, a lower carbohydrate is saying eat less but not none, and so on and so forth. And so the thing that I find interesting is across the different diets, if you will, what stays generally the same, at least within a relatively similar range, is the protein. Some will have a moderate protein with higher fat, lower carb, and some will have a moderate protein with higher carb, lower fat, and those areas will get modified around. But the one thing that the majority of health experts still recommend is meeting a certain protein requirement. And generally, unless you're, kind of stuck in the old nutritional world, generally it's higher than most people would consume on a day-to-day basis.
So one of the things, sorry, this is kind of a tangent here, Jamie, but I think one of the things we need to start including when we talk about Eat by Design is that our philosophy is we're pro human flourishing. So our recommendations for nutrition are gathered around, not saving the environment, not saving the animals. It's what is required for your body to be optimal based on the data. And I think that's important for you have to be on board with that if you're going to eat this way, because if you're if you're against eating animal products, then, and you respect, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just, the advice applications are going to be limited.
Sure. It definitely gets more difficult. We have people in our practices and clients that we work with who, eat by design, but we have to modify the protein sources to a vegetarian source. And I'm right up front and say, look, I don't think this is going to be the best source of protein for you, and I've got all my reasons why, but you can do it and you can still get great results, and it's better than eating garbage for sure. And so let's work together and, let's continue to go down that path and help you with that. But you're right. If we're being, completely upfront, we do think healthy animal products are the healthiest, most nutrient dense foods on the planet. Of course, the way they're raised is important. You're developing the best fat profiles that they are raised, and they're consuming foods that they're designed to eat, and kind of look down the path and the farming practices. And we're on board with all that stuff, but you want to create the best source of protein that you can get to fuel your body with that. And the thing I love about protein, again, very similar to real food, is it's self-regulating. There's only so much protein you can eat before your body says, well, I'm full. And when you're full, your body starts, reducing the hunger, and you don't have a desire to go and eat. And so this is where, even again, our personal practice, this is not a fasting podcast today, but I believe you still fast, Croatia?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't even consider it. It's not deliberate. I think the issue with fasting is that it becomes deliberate. I have to fast for 18 hours.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, so for me,
it's like 11:59 and I'm hungry, but I need to wait one more minute before I can eat, as if that's going to make any difference at all.
100%. For me, my understanding around it is genetically over generations, we've become accustomed to, eating things a certain way. And thankfully, and I'm thankful for this, modern society has provided us with nutritious food all the time if we really want to. But the environment doesn't match what my body expects. So fasting for me is my best way to try to genetically give my body what it's expecting.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And for those who haven't tried it, I think it's worth giving it a shot, to the point where now I know for me, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting to get hungry. So if I feel like I'm hungry, instead of eating garbage, I'll just eat food, like my regular meal. And I think that's an important part too of, eating well is, and even when you look at dieting, to go back to your original example, if somebody wants to get in a dress, one of the most important principles, and this sounds counterintuitive to most people, one of the most important principles is not getting hungry. Right. Or not getting really hungry, right? Where you're making bad decisions. It even made me think of the other night when we brought some gluten-free pizza home, and I got home from work and there was gluten-free pizza. And, of course, I wanted to crush like a whole pizza because that's what I can do. And first thing I did is I went to the fridge and I ate an entire bowl of chicken salad.
Nice.
Right? And those are the decisions that they've taken time to build up to. That's not a decision I would typically make. That was new for me. And, I've been working really hard on, really getting some results that I want and I truly feel connected to. And so just in that moment, I said, you know what? I'm going to go crush a bowl of chicken salad, eat as much protein as I can. And then I went and had the pizza and I had 3 pieces instead of 12 pieces. Right. And, that type of decision could be the difference maker when you accumulate those over time, over long periods. So the first 2, I would say, more than anything in Eat by Design, are the 2 most important, which is eat real food and eat protein with every meal. Okay?
I don't know. Number 3 is pretty important too.
What's number 3? Oh, increase your quality fat intake.
You got it.
Yeah. Well, and so let's make this simple. By eating real food, by eating healthy animal products, you don't have to add a lot of other fat.
Yeah. Well, again, so here's the thing, right? It's important to gain an understanding, right? Because I can say, well, I eat chicken breasts for every meal.
Right.
But that's good protein. Yes,
True.
But it's not, you're missing a full fat profile if that's all that you're eating.
Yeah. So if we go back to the protein concept, one piece you could add in there is really trying to eat the entire animal, right? Tip to tail, whether it be bone broths and, cooking down some of the other bones, eating some organ of the cuts of meat, that you wouldn't necessarily think to eat. So tip to tail probably could be added into the protein recommendation as well. And if you do that, then when we look at increasing quality fat intake, because fat doesn't make you fat and our body needs fat, a lot of it's just going to come from eating normally. Any additional ones could be things like, avocados or, maybe some grass-fed dairy products, pasteurized butter, even ghee, olive oil, possibly some nuts and seeds and things like that. And that's going to be it's going to be more than enough. You're going to get pretty much everything you need in that way. Ratio number 4, I believe, is Is it vegetables?
Vegetables.
Right. So number 4 is eat your vegetables. And I think you don't even really have to talk about this.
Well, no, hold on. There is
ahead.
something we do need to talk about.
Sure.
So the reason you want to eat your vegetables is vegetables are an excellent source of micronutrients, right? So
Sure.
this is the requirement of, you do need zinc and you do need magnesium and you do need, folate and whatever else we're getting. The other good source of micronutrients is animal products.
Right. Yeah. Let's not bypass how important animal products are as a nutrient dense source of things other than just protein and good fats.
Right. And you mentioned, some of the clients that we work with being vegan and vegetarian, and credit to this is why it's wonderful that we live in the society that we do, because there are decent quality protein products available now to vegans and vegetarians that will supplement the decrease in protein. But one of the things that is challenging for vegans and vegetarians to get that requires a tremendous amount of supplementation is the micronutrients found in animal products.
Sure. Yeah, whether it be the omega-3 fats, that's a big one, whether it be fat-soluble vitamins, and again, some of these other ones, iron. So I'm all for eating vegetables. I personally think
it's not either or, right? It's not like I eat vegetables or I eat meat. I just eat food.
Yeah, I eat real food. Now, I personally think that the requirements that you're going to fulfill through vegetable intake, people could probably eat, this might sound crazy, but you got to think about this before you go off here. People could probably eat far less vegetables than they think they need to, because I think this becomes a deal breaker for some people. They think they need to eat, like 27 salads a day because we've been told, 8 servings of fruits and vegetables. Well, number one, we don't really line up with the standardized food guide anyway. But also number two, a serving size of a fruit and vegetable is small. So you could have a salad and that could have 5 or 6 or 10 servings of fruits and vegetables inside the one salad. So I think that, that's an important concept. And then number two, I think people get hung up on the fact, man, that's a lot of fiber to eat. That's a lot of raw veggies. We cook most of our veggies, and there's evidence to say that cooking your vegetables is going to make some of the nutrients more bioavailable, breaking down the cellulose walls. People in the carnivore side who say don't eat vegetables, that's part of the knock against vegetables is some of the anti-nutrients and effects that plants have that you're not going to get with animal products. And if you have an autoimmune response, if you have gut issues, that camp would actually say just get rid of vegetables and just focus on healthy animal products. Get most of your nutrients or all your nutrients that way and remove the potential food toxicity. So sure, we're on board with eating your vegetables. I don't think you need to go overboard. And I think that you don't need to make it a deal breaker where you need to have 27 servings of raw vegetables a day.
No, man, one big salad a day. We're good.
Yeah, I think that's simple. Number 5, Cratio?
I don't remember. Number 5 is this cholesterol or saturated fat?
This is going to be grains and legumes.
Yes.
So let's stop here for a second. The first 4, if you notice, are all about adding in. And so there's no taking away until we actually get some of these in place. And I would say if all you ever did was this, then you've done more than enough, right?
Yeah,
you've done a large part of it. And what'll happen naturally is if you handle these first 4 consistently, everything else will, for the most part, fall into place. And for many cases, unless you have very specific goals that are, say, health related or body composition related, and even maybe getting into a higher level of those goals, you may not even have to make some of these other changes. Now, we're giving you the gold standard. We're talking about what the body's requirements are and, what it is that you can do and should do. So I think what we'll do, Cratio, is we'll stop right there on today's episode. And when we come back on the next episode, we'll talk about some of the things to take out and a couple other points that are going to make eating by design, I don't want to say seamless, but definitely achievable for most people. So guys, go to the show notes, lifebydesign.com/podcast, find today's episode, and thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.